Hey guys, and welcome to Gwent, the Witcher card game. My name is Jaggerous, and today I have another game from the Gwent Open esports event that happened this weekend, and this is the Freddybabes versus SuperJJ semi-final set. Bear in mind, because this is a stream, the audio quality is a little bit worse than you would typically get from my videos, but beyond that, please enjoy and let me know what you think in terms of the casting. Any feedback is appreciated. We can see the decks. We've got Unseen Elder, Emir, and Radovid for Freddybabes, and Emir, Henselt, and Crack and Crate for SuperJJ. And I wonder what they'll open with, because last time SuperJJ opened with, I believe, his Crack and Crate deck. So I'm wondering if that's what he'll go for this time. Meanwhile, Freddy, he really tried to win with the Radovid at first, and actually lost the first two games. He played that in the previous match. So interesting to see what the players are going to choose, especially when you know if you're going first or second. And actually, it's a Northern Realms mirror, Henselt versus Radovid. So at the top, we see SuperJJ. He knows he's going second. And at the bottom, we then have Freddybabes. Freddy is running this kind of armor blue stripe scout deck, whereas SuperJJ is running a machines deck. Now machines, he's running a lot of ballista, which means he does really well against lots of units that have the same strength, and that might count against Freddy because he's running these blue stripe scouts. Blue stripe scouts, they buff all units with the same power in your hand, deck, and on the board. So those are 3 strength, and he's also running blue stripe commandos, which are 3 strength, and they get pulled whenever a unit of the same strength gets pulled. So blue stripe scouts, effectively what they do is they will thin the blue stripe commandos out of the deck. But that does then create a lot of units with the same strength. Now, SuperJJ has ballistas. You can see that 6 strength unit in SuperJJ's hand. And the way that they work is that they shoot a unit, and then they hit 5 other units with the same strength, up to 5 other units with the same strength. And if they have crewmen, which is an effect for Northern Realms, so basically certain units have a crewman tag, you place them down next to the crewman, and they get to shoot an extra time. So that's going to be quite painful for SuperJJ. Sorry, for Freddy, if SuperJJ plays those and hits all of his 3s, /4s/5s. Alternatively, though, Freddy has Lambert in his hand, and Lambert, it hits a unit for 5 and all of the copies for 4. And so that's going to be really good against Henselt, because Henselt, when you target a unit, you pull all other unit versions of that unit from your deck, if they are, I believe, machines or Cadwin or soldiers. There's basically certain specifications that they have to be, but battering rams, which SuperJJ has, falls into that specification. His crewmen fall into that specification. His ballista fall into that specification. So definitely something to be aware of. Freddybabes opting to play the Trollolol. This is going to be gaining 2 armor per turn, and then he has the 7 strength Dunbanner heavy cavalry in his hand, and he can use the cavalry to target that and take the armor and gain points. But like I said, he knows that SuperJJ is running Villain Mirth, so he knows that there is the potential that that big unit that he plays is going to get scorched. And typically at this stage, Freddybabes would be playing out his 3 strength commandos and getting them on the board and getting some points out, but he does know that those ballistas are there, so he has to be a little bit wary in terms of how he chooses to utilize these. Usually you'd spam them all during one round, but potentially that's not the best strategy. You can see there, they then buffed up to 4, the ones in his hand buffed up to 4. And this is good because it means that he can't just kill them with battering rams. Although if he damages them, they then have less strength, which means any subsequent blue stripe scouts that he chooses to play will then not buff the damaged units because they'll no longer be on 4 strength. And this is an interesting deck for both players. They kind of have to think about what they're trying to do here very carefully. Like SuperJJ knows that there's a lot of the blue stripe units in Freddy's deck, so when does he want to play his ballista? Meanwhile, Freddy knows that there's those units in his deck, so he has to kind of think about when am I going to play my blue stripe scout, knowing that there's ballista. And actually, Henselt has come straight out here, and he's pulling out these siege towers. And these siege towers, you can see that became a 12. When you play them next to a crewman, they become even stronger. This basically means that Villain Mirth is going to be a little bit tricky to play this round, but that's a huge, huge tempo play. However, like I say, Freddy does have Lambert, so if he plays Lambert, he'll get the 7, the 5, and the 2 4s, which I believe is 20 points. So he has that 20-point Lambert he can play, and that will actually put him ahead of SuperJJ. And if you're going first, basically you want to always try and stay ahead of your opponent, because if you can stay ahead of your opponent, it means that your opponent can't pass and gain 2-card advantage. So Lambert, I think, is like there. You see, we see him play it there. A good play at this point. And you can see he actually targeted the card on the right first, the 10 strength, bringing that down to a 5, which ensured that the 2 on the left were an 8 strength. So he wanted to keep those 2 units on the same strength, which can be useful if you're playing cards like Igni and whatnot. I don't believe Freddybabes is, but sometimes it is useful just to keep a row on similar strength, should you be wary of Scorch effects. Now, SuperJJ then has to kind of answer to this, and he's kind of in a bit of an awkward spot because he doesn't want to start shooting things yet. He wants to wait till there's more units on the board. Kira here he can actually use for Aeromancy because he's running White Frost in this deck. He could use it to buff up his units on the back row with a Thunderbolt Potion. We see Roach coming out, but equally he could choose to, I believe, run Aeromancy and pull that White Frost and put some weather effects down. That would hit 2 rows. Either middle and top or middle and bottom. But the problem is there's no units on the middle row, so it would only be frosting 1 row. And so SuperJJ has opted to go for that Thunderbolt Potion and just get the pure points out of Kira, which combined with the Roach pool, again, has created a lot of tempo, which kind of forces Freddy to answer this. Like I said, because Freddy is going first, he has to kind of keep ahead of SuperJJ, whereas SuperJJ, he can always win at 1 card deficit should Freddy pass, basically. In terms of how Gwent works. So Freddy now has to make up quite a few points there. And you can see opting for the John Natalis. This pulls a tactics card from your deck. He can choose marching orders or reinforcements. Reinforcements allows him to draw more or less any card that he likes. And he's gone for the Dunbanner Heavy Cavalry, which will then take all of that armor off of Trollolol and buff the Dunbanner accordingly. Now, SuperJJ does have Villain Trettenmirth, but Villain Trettenmirth triggers after a 3-turn timer. So Freddy will kind of always know when Villain Trettenmirth is coming. He kind of, it's not like a Scorch effect where it instantaneously kills your card. He has a little bit of time to kind of deal with it. Interestingly enough, SuperJJ is running Summoning Circle. Summoning Circle, when you play it, it creates a copy of the last bronze or silver card played. So this is really interesting because that is a card that can be played in loads of different situations, and you can use it to replay your own card should your opponent play a gold and you've played a bronze or silver prior. You can use it to replay your opponent's card. You can use it to replay a spy. It's a very versatile card, but kind of knowing when the best time to play it is a little bit tricky because you don't necessarily know exactly what's coming. So you have to be a little bit careful in that regard. Now, Freddy wants to thin his deck. He's got these commandos in the deck, the blue stripe commandos, that he doesn't want to be drawing. Those are the cards that are drawn when a unit of similar strength is played. So he doesn't want to be drawing those. What he wants to be doing is thinning them out of his deck, which also means that he's likely to draw better in the next round. But as I said, he's still wary of these ballista that SuperJJ has. So playing these, he's now got 4 5 strength units on the board, which means if SuperJJ plays that ballista, which he's gone and done, next to the Kruben, the Henselt, he's going to shoot all of those for 2 points apiece. So that's 8 points of damage from the ballista, plus the 6 in his base. That's a 14-point play. And so again, it's a bit of a tempo play. And again, Freddy is going to have to look for answers in order to keep up. He can play the last blue stripe scout and pull the commando from his deck. That would also buff all of his Temerians. He has Temerians in the deck, which when you play one, it pulls the other 2. So they would then all become 6s, which would turn 1 Temerian into an 18-point play, which is a really, really nice play going forward. So that is definitely something that Freddy's going to consider. And actually, he's chosen to do that, thin the deck and buff up his Temerians in the deck and improve his chances for drawing on the next round. He's got the Mahakam Ale in hand. Mahakam Ale, what it does is it buffs units on each row. But hold that thought, you can see the Siege, the Kideni Siege Master coming out. And that's a crewman, and that allows you to replay the ability of one of your machines. So you saw him there replay the ballista and shoot all of those units. And that is what Freddy was kind of afraid of in playing these blue stripe commandos. Now he's 46 to 61. So the question is, are you going to lose this one on even? Because he's going to have to make up, let me see, I believe it is 15 points to be even, so 16 points in one play. He's got the Bernard Tudor. If he plays that, he can mulligan a card and target draw a spell. But that's not really what he wants to do. He's got Radovid, but that's only 14. He's got Dunbanner, but that's only 13. So he doesn't really have the plays to catch up here. So he's going to have to decide whether he's okay with going 2 cards down. And you can see where he's thinking, where do I want to play this unit? Do I want to play it in the middle row, which sets up his Ales, which SuperJJ knows he has, or do I want to play it on the front row and kind of stack my units? And he's opted to play it there on the middle row. I think this kind of shows SuperJJ that Freddy doesn't have any more tempo plays that he wants to play. He can't really afford to play Dijkstra this round because he needs good power plays for the final round, and that's what that is. So instead, he's opting to play that Dunbana. And now SuperJJ is in that position where he has to decide whether he'd rather win this round or whether he'd rather lose this round with 2-card advantage, which almost certainly would lead to Freddybabes passing the next round in order to try and regain some card differential so that SuperJJ is only 1 card up instead of 2. What he can do here is he could play the Summoning Circle and mulligan, but he's opted to just pass and take that 2-card advantage. Freddy will then throw out the beer, buff up his units. That gives him the round. He passes, but he passes on 3 cards to SuperJJ's 5. So 2 cards down. And he can make that back up if he just passes on this turn. So what he would have to do here is just straight pass and let SuperJJ have the round. This is great draws for Freddy. Temerian Infantry, really nice to pull 18 points, and Prince Stennis to thin the deck. I'm unsure whether we'll see Freddy mulligan here. He does have Sheila still in his deck, which allows him to play a spell, but he can potentially draw her with the Stennis if he thins the Temerians. And actually, Freddy choosing to play into this round, which I think is a very brave strategy. I guess he maybe feels that SuperJJ won't be able to make a play that catches him up enough with 1 card, which would be potentially incorrect depending on what he has to Shani. He could make 18 points through the Shani. I'm not entirely sure exactly what's in the graveyard. I'd have to do the maths. But Freddy, I think he needs to pass this round. Going into a round 2 cards down and trying to win is incredibly difficult. Like, he does have a lot of tempo for sure. And with SuperJJ having that spy in hand, it does make SuperJJ's life that bit more difficult. But Freddy's opted to play the Temerians and thin his deck, which means that when he draws for the final round, he's unlikely to draw another Temerian. So this improves the chances of his draws for the final round, but it does put him in a little bit of a difficult spot in terms of card differential, because if SuperJJ happened to have a play here that gave him 19 points, it means that potentially he could go into the final round still on that 2-card deficit. So Freddybabes is basically counting on the fact that SuperJJ doesn't have a play that nets him enough points. And you can see him looking at the graveyards there. So potentially considering that Shani, which is 5, he'd still have to find 14 points with the Shani. Muzzle is not enough. Muzzle would put them on, I believe, 6 versus 12. So not really the play that he wants either. And actually opted to go for that Muzzle play anyway. So interesting to see whether Freddy will keep playing here or whether Freddy will pass and kind of leave the round. He does have Radovid to deal with the Villain Tretameth. So honestly, Villain Tretameth, not that big of a threat for Freddy. SuperJJ doesn't have a lot of other good targets for the lock, so just holding that lock until Villain Tretameth is perfectly fine for Freddy, although it does mean that he doesn't have that tempo play should he need it, that 14-point play from the Radovid. So Freddy choosing to continue to play Stennis into the Dunbanner Heavy Cavalry, not what he wanted to see. I mean, he does get the armor off of Stennis there, and the armor goes onto the Dunbanner. It's still, a 13-point play, but maybe not exactly what he wanted. Interestingly, he's opted again to put that unit on the same row as Stennis rather than setting up his Ale. So again, I'm just wondering how much longer Freddy intends to stay in this round rather than piecing out, I guess, and moving on to the next round. SuperJJ, though, in a little bit of an awkward spot because he has that Thaler in hand. That gives your opponent 11 points and allows him to draw a card. And he maybe was intending to play it on the 3rd round, but it's quite an awkward one to play because, you don't want to be giving his opponents points if he wants to win. The Dunbanner summoning circle, I really like. He took the armor off the Dunbanner and then basically gained points for himself. It was a 12-point play. He's keeping tempo. He's a little bit behind, but keeping tempo with Freddy. And Freddy's just, it seems to be trying to drain out SuperJJ's cards. And now you're in an awkward spot because you don't want to play Radovid because he has Villain Tretanmirth. And he has to play Villain Tretanmirth as the 3rd last card, which means Freddybabes will always be able to answer it because Villain Tretanmirth has a timer. So he can't play Radovid. He can't really play his Ale because if he plays his Ale, he's only going to get 8 points out of it. And ideally, he's keeping that for Sheila. So the question was whether he chooses to play Dijkstra or pass. And there's the Sheila. So he'll then play the Ale now from hand and draw another card, which is nice. So he gets Naneke into hand. And then he also plays another card from his deck, Marching Orders, which, oh, painful. Pulled that 3-point Reaver Scout. Nothing to target there, nothing left in the deck. So a little bit painful, I would say, from Freddy. But still, quite a lot of points up. 25 points ahead. But there are those 3 strength targets. Although I think 3 strength targets aren't enough for the battering rams. I believe battering rams do 2 damage, and if they kill the unit, then they do more damage. So battering rams are only looking at 9 points apiece. So SuperJJ in a little bit of an awkward spot here. He didn't find his Ronvid of Small March, giving him a permanent crewman, which would have helped with those battering rams, giving them targets and allowing him to get more damage out. So all in all, I would say that this is quite a difficult position for SuperJJ. He's going to have to invest a lot of cards into this round. And it looks like Freddy's ready to go all in, really. So out comes the battering ram, 7 strength, shoots interestingly a 6 to put it down to 4. I'm surprised he didn't shoot Stennis or the Reaver Scout in order to set up a kill there, but instead chose to shoot that 6 strength unit, bringing it down to a 4-point unit. Unsure exactly what the thought process was there for SuperJJ. I guess he doesn't expect to play his other battering ram this round, but he's got a lot of points to make up and not a lot of great ways to do it. And Freddy's sitting here wondering, do I want to play Naneke? He knows exactly what that last card is in his deck. He knows what he's going to draw. So if he plays Naneke, if he puts more units in, it's to kind of improve the chances there. But actually, he's chosen to go for the pass here. And this is going to give SuperJJ a chance to mulligan that Thaler. I don't think he's going to keep the Spy for the final round, especially with Radovid in Freddybabes' hand. His Villain Dreadmouth he knows isn't going to go off. So now he has to figure out the best way to make up 17 points. He can get 9 from the battering ram, which means that he'd need to make up another 8 points, which he can make with Villain Dreadmouth, should he choose to just play Villain Dreadmouth because he knows it's going to be locked anyway. But this is a very difficult position for SuperJJ because Freddy's got that lock. So Freddy's got guaranteed 14 points plus whatever he has in his hand. And SuperJJ knows potentially that it's a Naneke and one other card. So he's actually opted to play the Shani this round and go for the Resurrect. I'm wondering if he's actually able to get enough points with this play. I don't think he is. The Siege Tower is only worth 10, and he doesn't have... Oh, he does have a machine to replay. He has the battering ram, and there he's actually opted to shoot Stennis, and that's given him the crewman that he needs. So he's opted to shoot both, but it's not quite enough points. They're on 39 to 39. So Freddy amazingly has managed to regain the card advantage, going from 2 cards down to no cards down with that play. What a fantastic play by Freddy. He managed to play that really nicely, and it was just unfortunate for SuperJJ having no crewman in hand meant that he didn't quite have as much damage as he would like. And that last card there was the Shani. So effectively, this is really good for Freddy, because what he can do is he can Shani Stennis, and then Stennis will draw whatever he chooses to put back into his deck with Naneke. So Naneke, he chooses to put a card back into his deck, and he can put whatever he likes into his deck. SuperJJ opting to play that Thaler there and take the card draw. And, I think this is kind of going to show SuperJJ that he's really kind of messed up. He's not in a great position here, and he knows it. You can see the way he's looking at this board that Freddy is more or less comfortable to put whatever he likes back into the deck, and he's opted to put Stennis back into the deck and Trollalol, which is kind of interesting because he should be only putting 1 card into the deck that he can then draw with Stennis. And there we see him then choosing not to put Stennis back into the deck, because Stennis is going to be his res target, right? So he reses Stennis, it pulls Trollalol, and he gets a huge power play by Shani. That's 11 plus 3 plus 5. That's 19 points, I believe. Huge play there. And he doesn't have to lock this Villain Tretamurth just yet. He's got plenty of time on the timer, and SuperJJ knows it's going to get locked. SuperJJ knows there's nothing that he can do to stop it getting locked. And really, he had to play the Thaler. He had to play the Thaler to allow the Villain Tretamurth to go off, because Villain Tretamurth needs 3 cards. Out comes the lock. The lock goes down on the Villain Tretamurth and the Sergeant, so denying him that crewman as well with his 6 strength ballista. And that's all, folks, as Freddybabes very cleanly takes round one against SuperJJ. You know, playing around those ballistas, I think, really successfully. Unfortunate for SuperJJ, he didn't find Ronvid. He didn't have a lot of crewmen. And that tempo play by Freddy in round two really pushed him ahead and negated the card advantage that SuperJJ had earned in the first round. And you can see this Freddybabes deck is very consistent in the way that it is thinning. And Freddy able to find all of his cards multiple times, the times we've seen him play this deck. And this is why I think he opened with Radovid in the quarterfinals twice, was because he is quite confident with the deck. And it's also maybe a trickier one for their opponent to play against, not being as familiar against, say, Radovid as decks like Emir and decks like Bran. So interesting to see here what Freddy will play next, whether he'll go for the Emir or the Consume. Last game, I think he saved Emir till last, so potentially we'll see the Consume here, and there it is. And SuperJJ's opted to go for his Spy deck, which is a staple. So opting to step away from Northern Realms for now and go into the Spies. We see him mulligan Roach. Freddy's got a couple Neckers in hand. He's got Monster's Nest, Harpies, Ekamara, Renew. You know, fairly solid hands. Like, Freddybabes, his deck, because he's running Harpies and Neckers, he does risk getting a really bad mulligan, but as this is, he seems to have quite a happy hand on the go. SuperJJ, on the other hand, got lots of Imperial Enforcers and Imperial Brigades, and I think typically you want to see more emissaries in hand than those. You want to thin your deck, so you want to be playing as many emissaries as you can. And in this situation, he's only got the one emissary and the Vic of Aro. But because his hand is full of Impera, it means that the emissary is more likely to draw more emissaries, so he can thin them that way. It's just more RNG based. So interesting to see how that will play out for SuperJJ, especially with no gold cards in hand versus Freddybabes' 2. So we see the emissary come out into, there's the emissary chaining I just mentioned, into an Impera, and that will get buffs for each spy on the board and every time another spy is played. So that is a 10 strength Impera brigade. And now if he does kill an enforcer with the Impera, and if he kills an emissary with the Imperial Enforcer, that then gives him a target for Vic of Aro Medic, such that he can get more emissaries out. And Freddybabes has to be a little bit wary with his Frightener, because when he plays Frightener, SuperJJ does have a Mir, so SuperJJ could choose to pick that up. Freddybabes opting for the Unseen Elder play, and that pulls out the Wolves and the Fogler. And those 3 Wolves, we have seen Freddybabes in the past eat them with Unseen Elder, which will then count as consuming a beast. And as soon as he consumes a beast, that then pulls the Harpies from his deck out of his deck and thins his deck. And you can see Freddy really does favor these decks with very consistent thinning. We've seen that happen in the last game, for example, where he played every single card from his deck, plus 1 extra that he put back into his deck. So you can see him hovering the Unseen Elder there and contemplating playing that, eating the 3 Wolves and thinning his deck of the Harpies, and that is exactly what he's opted to do. So there go the Wolves, and out come the Harpies. And you're trading those 3 1 strengths for 3 3 strengths, and the 1 strengths actually each go onto Unseen Elder, so a really big tempo play there from Freddy. Dealing damage, also the Harpies each time they come out, they shoot the smallest unit, so dealing damage as well. And putting him 26 points to SuperJJ's 14. So SuperJJ basically needs to play 13 points here, again, to keep up with the tempo. And otherwise, you know, you risk going 2 cards down, as we saw in the previous match. So this is a little bit awkward for SuperJJ, as I said, because he doesn't have emissaries in his hand. Usually you want to play emissaries, and then by playing emissaries, you're thinning out your deck, but you're also getting the buffs that they trigger on the Impera. A very early Emir coming out. So you play Emir, and then you play a card from your hand. He's opted to play Van Hamar, which I will believe would go into Novados Potion, at which point you can then pick up one of the cards on the board, and SuperJJ there picking up the Van Hamar. So Freddy no longer has to be a bit wary of when he plays his Spy. That is that done. And SuperJJ just trying to create some space between him and Freddy, such that he can make his lower tempo plays later on and get those units on the board without having to always be trying to play catch up. Freddy is 7 points behind. If he plays the Harpy, that gives him 7 points, and that puts them on a even Stevens position in terms of the playing field, which means that if SuperJJ chose to pass here, it would just be a 2-round game. They'd each get a point, and the next round would be all to play for with all of their cards. I don't imagine that SuperJJ will go for that, simply because his hand is really empty and he hasn't thinned his deck that much. He doesn't have golds, he doesn't have his Menno, for example, or Vilgefortz or any of his more powerful cards, and he's only played 2 emissaries so far. And because he's only played 2 emissaries, you know, there's still a lot of cards in his deck. So I imagine at this stage he may opt for that Vikavaro Medic, resurrect an emissary, and then play a bronze card and thin his deck a little bit more, such that when he draws, he's in a better position than he is at the moment. The alternative is you also have the Imperial Enforcer, and you can shoot a unit and you can kill one of the eggs, but that always leaves a second egg behind. And Freddybabes, with the Ekamara in hand, is going to be eating those eggs and getting a lot of tempo. You can see he actually opted to shoot the egg there rather than go for the emissary play, and that's smart because then the Enforcer will shoot every time you play a spy, so it maximizes the points from your Enforcer, and he can kind of afford to do that. The thing is, he has to wonder whether, you know, Freddy is going to continue into this round, and I think with 1 egg on the board, you're likely to just eat that egg and take the 11 points, and also set up your carryover. Ekamaras, they have resilience, which means at the end of the round they reset down to base strength if they're boosted. If they're below base strength, they just maintain that strength and then carry over onto the board on the next round, which means that you can't just dry pass and gain card advantage. So there's the resurrect into the emissary, and that means that SuperJJ will get a shot, because SuperJJ has an Imperial Enforcer on the board, which means Imperial Enforcer, what it can do is it can take a shot every time you play a spy. It sounds like a drinking game, doesn't it? Take a shot every time you play a spy. I don't know how well that would end if you were playing Nilfgaard spies. I think quite alcoholic, to be honest. And he's opted for the Infiltrator, which puts the spying tag onto a unit, and then opting to shoot the what is it called? Shoot the Ekamara down to 7 strength, which means if he plays his Nausicaa Brigade, the 5 strength unit in his hand, he can straight kill that and deny Freddy's carryover. So now Freddy has to kind of decide what he wants to do here. An option would be to eat the 7 strength spy and then stop it from being killed with the Nausicaa. You're always a little bit worried with spies of when they're going to play Menno, because they have these infiltrators, and that is something that you can do. And because Freddy doesn't have Caretaker, he can't then resurrect SuperJJ's infiltrator and use it to turn the spying tag off. But instead, he's actually opted to play the Griffin and basically put the emissaries from one graveyard into the other. So he's decided to move the spy into SuperJJ's graveyard such that he can't target it with Vikavaro Medic. Freddybabes now, though, 31 points to 50. So SuperJJ built up a huge amount of tempo, especially with that Nausicaa play. The 9 plus the 7, a 16-point play there, creating him a lot of space. And Freddy doesn't have a huge number of responses in terms of catching up. However, he doesn't necessarily have to catch up in just 1 card. He can choose to catch up in 2 cards, and that would, you know, be very comfortable for him. So, you know, with Freddy here, he's maybe thinking, do I play the NECA? Do I play my Ekamara and set up more carryover? If he's going to set up more carryover, you know, if he eats the emissary, it goes to the graveyard, so he doesn't really want to do that. And actually, eating the Unseen Elder sets up his Renew. So he can choose to play the Unseen Elder again this turn, apply more fog, and pull that Foglet from his graveyard. So that is, I think, quite telling to SuperJJ. If SuperJJ sees Freddybabes eat an Unseen Elder, then he's going to be expecting Renew. Because why would you eat your gold unit? You'd eat your gold unit because you need it in your graveyard. Why do you need your gold unit in your graveyard? Because you're running Renew. So it's up to SuperJJ now in terms of his answer. He's 13 points up, but I don't think he feels confident in being able to maintain that advantage with just 1 card. Although actually opting to pass, if Freddy plays the Renew, he gets 9 points plus 3 plus fog. So Freddybabes, if he does play the Renew, then that will catch him up the points that he needs and set him up into the next round. And there's the Renew coming out. There goes the Woodland Spirit. And that goes Freddybabes with only 1 card disadvantage, which is a comfortable way to win, especially when you're running these Neckers. Because Neckers, when they die, it pulls another Necker from your deck. Freddy has 2 more Neckers in his deck. He has an 8 strength Necker there. And also he has a Spy. He has his 12 strength Frightener. So he can regain that card advantage quite comfortably. And actually drawing 2 Neckers here, I'd imagine he'll mulligan one of the Neckers because he intends to pull them later into a Kayran, which he can use to eat any target. He does have the 6 points of carryover, and if he plays the Necker now, that then gives him carryover going into the next round. And potentially what he's going to look to do here is to drain more of SuperJJ's cards. Saying that, SuperJJ has got Rainfawn and he's found Muzzle, so he's found some gold cards. And Rainfawn into Joachim, which we saw in SuperJJ's hands, a very standard play, although Joachim is in hand. Rainfawn also into Cantarella, giving him a Spy is a very standard play, which you can then kill with Menno. But SuperJJ doesn't currently have Menno. Freddybabes is just looking to set up more carryover here. He's got the Spy in his hand, so what he can do this round is just set up all of his carryover and then play the Spy and regain that card advantage. So rather than dry passing in order to force your opponent to play and regaining card advantage, he's going to be using that Spy and then for now just setting up plenty of carryover with his Neckers and with his Ekamara. And he's quite, happy to do that. SuperJJ continuing to thin the deck. There's the Vicavaro into the Emissary combo once again. And this is what I mean about playing Emissaries, is you want to play as many Emissaries as you can to thin your deck. That's what Spies does. That's why it's consistent. There's another Emissary coming out, and this is where you hope to find an Enforcer, which I believe he'll then shoot the Ekamara for 8 points, I believe, because he's got the 3 Spies plus the deploy damage. So putting it down to 4, which is then reducing Freddybabes' carryover. But Freddybabes can use the K-Ran 4 strength and eat a unit of 6 strength or less. Guess what has 6 strength or less? An Enforcer. So then you're denying those shots by eating that unit. And it's also a decent tempo play. You're taking 6 points off your opponent. You're giving yourself 6 points plus the base 4. Translates into a 16-point play. And with the 3-point advantage already, that gives him a 19-point advantage. And that really puts the pressure on for SuperJJ. SuperJJ, though, does have Muzzle. Muzzle, you can steal a unit of 8 or fewer strength from your opponent, and he's maybe wondering, does he want to take away Freddybabes' carryover? Muzzle on a 4 strength is only an 8-point play, and at the moment SuperJJ needs to make tempo. An 8-point play at the moment would actually catch him up, so if Freddybabes passes here, Muzzle onto that 4 strength Ekamara is a really nice play. But Freddybabes, you have to be aware that he does have his 10 strength Necker there. And if he plays this, then it will give him 10 points of carryover going on to the next round. That isn't targetable by Muzzle because it has more than 8 power. But if SuperJJ can damage it down to 8, then that is where he can then look to muzzle it. So that is something that we might see here. We see Freddybabes hovering the Frightener. I did say he would set up his carryover and then play the Frightener and get card advantage. At the moment, he's just trying to force SuperJJ to make tempo plays. And now that he's done that, he feels quite comfortable in playing the Frightener and drawing a card. Slizzard, we see, this is a new card, and what it does is you target a unit in your graveyard. You consume it, but you don't boost. Instead, you then draw that unit from your deck. And there goes the Rainfawn Cantarella, so the Spy for Spy play, and that's just to keep up with the card differential between SuperJJ and Freddybabes that we saw there, and pulling a Vilgafort. So SuperJJ's finally thinned his deck down, and he's really finding his gold cards now. Freddy considering what he wants to target with the Slizzard in his graveyard, whether he wants to try and find another Griffin, for example, potentially an Ekamara if that's in his graveyard, and whether he wants to play the Manticore. Manticore, typically you hold on to it because you're running Toad Prince, but Freddybabes just opting to take the points now and really put the pressure on SuperJJ, try and draw out as many cards from him as he can. So it's interesting to see how SuperJJ is going to answer this. You can see that he is 8 points down, so he needs to make 9 points. So Muzzle on nothing is going to work for him. Van Hamar, he can always play and do the Overdose, but that's a little bit overkill. The Overdose is definitely overkill. You don't want to be too far ahead in certain situations because you want to keep your good plays for later. Opting to play the Vilgaforts, and then I imagine he will burn the Vicavaro Medic, burn his 1 strength unit, and play the top card from his deck, thinning the deck even further. And again, trying to find that Menno potentially. We've got a Nausicaa, so that would clear weather, but there's no weather. It also boosts a unit by 3 points, opting to boost up Roach here. The consume on Monster's Nest is still good for Freddybabes. He has the Ghoul in there, so when the Manticore dies, he can just consume it from the graveyard. So playing the Manticore now versus waiting for Toad Prince is still a tactical play. It's still 13 points on the board and tempo. And you can see he's really just trying to force cards out of Freddybabes, not out of Freddybabes, out of SuperJJ, resurrecting and thinning the deck some more, pulling that harpy. A little bit more carryover. Those eggs each worth 1 point of carryover, as when they die, they spawn a harpy. And at the moment, you know, Freddybabes is sitting on 6 points of carryover, the 2-1 plus the 4. Again, I'm just wondering if SuperJJ is considering muzzling that 4 points and just giving himself a little bit of carryover, because he must know that Freddy has neckers. Like, if you're playing Consume, you hold on to a necker. He knows exactly what Freddy's last, at least one of Freddy's last cards is. So he's probably just waiting out the necker and then maybe trying to damage it. But at the moment, he just doesn't have the options to damage it. He could turn it into a spy and kill it with Menno, but he doesn't have Menno and he doesn't have Infiltrator. So that's not really an option either. Van Hamar into Overdose, though. If he's lucky, he can pop both of those eggs, stop the carryover. If he's extra lucky, pop both of those eggs, stop the carryover, also hit the Ekamara. The potion would hit, I believe, 6 targets. So with the number of units on Freddy's board, you know, that would be decent. But there goes the muzzle onto the carryover. So he's decided to take that carryover away from Freddy. Freddy then popping out that 11-point Ekamara and forcing SuperJJ to play to keep tempo. He needs to make at least 5 points, but all of his plays are quite big. So there goes the Overdose trying to pop the eggs. He got 1 egg, which is nice. You've done it carryover a little bit. But, you know, Freddybabes is still sitting on 12 points of carryover versus SuperJJ's 4. So even with 1 card down, if you've got 12 points of carryover, that typically counters that. SuperJJ, I think his you whack him in hand is known to Freddybabes. Like, Freddybabes definitely knows about that, having seen the Rainfarn Cantarella. I think he saw, you know, you see the number of units that your opponent can choose from, so you can kind of work out what they've got. He's definitely expecting that. Oh, there's another ghoul. Okay, this is interesting. Expecting that play. Kahir is not that great here. Kahir for SuperJJ, not a great card. It replays your leader ability, so he would pick something up and put it back down. He could pick up the Ekamara, he could pick up a Seer, he could pick up whatever Joaquin pulls. But you don't want to pick up what Joaquin pulls, because Joaquin, whatever his name is, whatever he pulls is going to be boosted. So if you pick it up, you're resetting that boost. So Kahir, not a great card. Freddy sticking with his ghoul and his monster's nest. So the ghoul, I believe, he'll then use to eat the Imperial Manticore in the graveyard, and that will boost his Necker further. Does he have a way of eating his last Necker? I'm not entirely sure that he does. So I'm just wondering what he will opt to play with the Monster's Nest, whether he opts to play a ghoul and eat something else in the graveyard. There is, you know, that 9 points of Nausicaa, but actually you'll notice that SuperJJ just put them back into the deck with a Seer and denies him such a big eat. Freddybabes not getting to eat as much as he would like, but 25 points to 20. But that, remember that Joachim is going to pull a unit from the deck and boost it, and depending on what that pulls, that could be pretty huge for Freddy. It's not for Freddy, for SuperJJ. Second ghoul comes out, looks in the graveyards, finds a big target, eats a big target. I believe the biggest is a 6. The Asir play, SuperJJ knew that Freddy was looking to eat out of the graveyard and just denied it with the Asir. So 19 points. There's the Joachim. There's the Nausicaa. It's a tie! Oh, it's not a tie. I can't do basic maths. It's 23 because it boosts. It's 19 plus it boosts because it does damage. It is not a tie. Jaggerous, what are you talking about? Oh, unfortunate. I think if Freddy had a way of eating his last Necker, and pulling the third one, that would have made all of the difference. The problem was he had a Necker on the board, but he didn't have a way to eat it and get the last one. So kind of denied all of the points that he built up on the Necker. SuperJJ pulling the best target that you can pull, really, with the Joachim, and that is that Nausicaa Brigade. Nausicaa Brigade, such a great target, such a huge number of points. And if you tie that in with the Rainfarn, it's really, really disgusting as a round 3 tempo play. And that's kind of one of the things that people expect. So 1 point apiece. It's not going to be straight sets, but you know, Emir considered probably one of the strongest decks in the current meta, so losing to that, no shame. Freddy now opting to play spies, and SuperJJ gone back to his machines. You can see the Guardian sitting in Freddy's hand, and Menno. We didn't see Menno last game. Menno, a very, very strong card, especially if you compare that with a Cantarella. Does Freddy have a Cantarella? No. Does he have Rainfarn? No. So not at the moment got the pairing that is the most fun, but Infiltrator works quite nicely too, and Infiltrator will allow him to kill crewmen, and being able to kill crewmen is also quite a valid strategy for Freddybabes. Saying that, we see SuperJJ sitting with a muzzle in hand, meaning that if Freddybabes plays Impera Enforcers, those Impera Enforcers can be muzzled and taken away, which is quite costly in terms of his points. The other thing to be aware of is the Ballista strategy we saw previously against the Blue Stripe Scouts, and the double K20 there, the 5 strength in SuperJJ's hand, are going to be kind of tough to deal with. Freddybabes now playing out his 11 strength Guardian. And interestingly, the last 2 games, the player who's gone first has won, which I think will maybe upset the community a little bit when they talk about coin flips and balance. Freddybabes opening with Guardian. Guardian, when it dies, it puts 2 lesser elementals on the top of your opponent's deck. So this is effectively bricking SuperJJ's draw. He will be able to mulligan one of those, but not both of them. So basically putting him into a situation where his hand is going to be less good than Freddy's, who can comfortably mulligan whatever he wants. So SuperJJ opening there with the battering ram. He honestly didn't have a lot of options. He could have opened with the siege tower, but again, it's like you don't have a lot of options because you don't have crewmen. The crewmen that he does have in hand are these 5 strength Kidweni, and those, they replay or recast a machine's ability. So you want to have a machine on the board before you play those. So he couldn't set up the crewman. You know, he doesn't have a target for Hensel. He's not going to be Henselting battering rams anyway because he has another one in hand. And maybe is going to hold on to that Hensel siege tower play that we saw earlier for a later round. So just opting to deal some damage there. Freddy setting up some units. There is the Imperial Enforcer. He will then kill the spy, take 1 shot on the battering ram, and then, actually opting to leave the spy and leave the emissary on the board. Interesting. Guess he doesn't feel the need to use his Vicavaro medic, but SuperJJ with the muzzle could just take away those 6 points from Freddybabes and give them to himself. A 12-point play would put him ahead and deny a lot of the damage that the Enforcer is likely to deal. Instead, looks like he's opting to replay his battering ram. This also heals the battering ram. And to shoot the Enforcer there for 3 points. I'm wondering exactly how Freddy will respond to this. He can Emir and pick up that Enforcer and heal it, but if he does that, there's still the muzzle in SuperJJ's hand. Just interesting to see SuperJJ opting to deal damage and play cards rather than dealing with the threat of the Enforcer, which is going to get out more shots. Freddy does have Silak in hand, the 2 strength range row locked unit we see there, so he could play that out and get another emissary out, and he could play Emir before he plays that. If he plays Emir before he plays that, then he gets the shots before he can pick up a unit. So plays the emissary, plays another emissary into another Enforcer, and he's got so many shots here. He's going to definitely kill that siege support, take away the crewman, and then shoot also some emissaries to put them into the graveyard. So many shots. He is going to be able to heal that machine, so, you know, shots on machines not so useful, but still, you know, potentially an option. SuperJJ could actually shoot this Guardian down 1 more point, and if he can shoot the Guardian down 1 more point, he can actually muzzle it. So potentially something that we'll see happen here is he kills that Enforcer and then shoots the Guardian, and then if he muzzles it, he's using Freddy's strategy against him. And that is definitely something that Freddy needs to be a little bit aware of. But opting to instead shoot the Enforcer and deal with those shots. We saw how many points Freddy got out of those shots, you know, still being ahead here after SuperJJ's play. Enforcers are incredibly strong units in spies, and they're something that you definitely need to deal with. So Silak comes out to play once again. Into an emissary chain, and he has to decide whether he wants an emissary or whether he'd rather get the shots. I think, you know, if you take the emissary, you risk not finding an Enforcer again, and if he takes this Enforcer, he can kill the Kidweni Siege Master, which he's wanting to do to deal with the crewman, although opting to shoot the spy. And I'm wondering if that was a bit of a misplay, because if you kill the spy, you get an extra shot. So he played 1 spy into an Enforcer. So actually, no, I think 3 shots was the right number of shots that he had. So maybe not a misplay there. But interesting that he chose to leave the crewman, because this is allowing SuperJJ to get more value. Admittedly, the 2 strength Silak would allow for the reset on the battering ram anyway. But it's just interesting to see that he opted to kill an emissary rather than take the shot. Putting emissaries in the graveyard does set him up his Vikavaro Medic, but I believe he's already shot some, so ultimately he already had units in the graveyard. You do maximize points by not shooting a 1 but getting 2 instead, but it still feels like a bit of an unusual play by Freddy. So I think at this point, Freddy is contemplating whether he Vikavaros an Emissary and thins his deck further. If he chooses to do that, you know, he does get a unit. SuperJJ sitting on White Frost. I don't think Freddy was going to play units on the middle row. He knows that White Frost is in that deck. So putting, you know, Selak on middle, you have to. But beyond that, I don't think he's going to be playing power onto the middle row. It's all going front row and back row. There's the Vikavaro into the Resurrect, into the the Emissary, into the Impera. And those Imperas buffed per spy. That is a huge play. Plus he gets the shots. Finally choosing to shoot that Kidweni and get rid of it, get it off the board. But with Shani in hand, SuperJJ is wanting to bring it straight back. He'll replay the battering ram, and you know, life will be kind of sad for Freddy as he gets shot once again. 3 strength shot, shooting that Enforcer at the back, and then another 3 strength shot puts that. Oh, this is where it gets interesting. It puts that 6 strength that Guardian down to 6 strength. It's now in muzzle range. So Freddy, if he keeps playing here, that muzzle is going down on that Guardian 100%. I don't see SuperJJ not making that play, because when you make that play, you basically brick your opponent's top deck instead of your own. So I feel like Freddy has to pass here, but losing on even is not a fun thing to do. He doesn't have a way of healing the Guardian. He just has to kind of accept it, unless he kills it now with Vilgefortz. Ooh, this could be the play. Burns his own Guardian, guaranteeing the effect and denying that muzzle. What a lovely play there by Freddybabes into an Iris that you can't necessarily kill at the moment, but you can kill it with Menno or with Assassination. So he does have options to kill that Iris, and SuperJJ knows that that Iris is going to die, and he's just pieced out of the round. The muzzle play would have been amazing, but Freddy definitely had the foresight to play around it and kill his own Guardian. Killing the Guardian triggers the Death Wish. Those top 2 cards on SuperJJ's deck are going to be the Lesser Guardians. We'll see him draw them now. So then he's going to have to mulligan 1. Iris. Did Freddy? Oh, I was going to say, did Freddy not kill Iris? But no, he didn't. So that's why we see the effect there. So there's the 2 Guardians in hand, being one of them mulliganed out for a battering ram. Henselt's still available for SuperJJ, so I'm wondering if Freddy will choose here to play into this round. He does have Cantarella, and he does have Menno, and he can generate a lot of pressure, and maybe try and force out that Henselt play. Henselt onto the Siege Tower is SuperJJ's plan for sure. Siege Tower, you know, it's a really strong unit. Playing 3 of them, lots and lots of strength. So I'm wondering if Freddy will choose to try and drain cards here such that SuperJJ doesn't get, you know, the machine synergy, doesn't get the crewman options, and maybe tries to force out that Henselt. He's got Cantarella, so he's quite happy to play her. She's a fantastic target for Menno, and this will give him an extra card as well, which helps to negate the card difference between SuperJJ and Freddy. Does he want an Infiltrator? He does not want an Infiltrator, and he's got a Nausicaa. And that's kind of annoying because Nausicaa is what you want to draw with It's what you want to draw with Joachim, as we saw in that previous game. If you draw the Nausicaa, it leads to a lot of points because you can then kill Joachim. The Infiltrator that he mulliganed is now at the bottom of his deck, so he's not going to see that again. SuperJJ opting to play that Guardian rather than mulliganing it. Nice play here because Freddy might just be playing a Spy and then choosing to pass. In which case you want to make a low tempo play here until you know more or less what it is that your opponent is trying to do. And I think Freddy's hand is kind of awkward. You know, you've got an Impera, but you have not really very many spies to play. You've got one spy. You have Joachim. And no cards to create spies, no cards to draw more spies. So that Enforcer, not worth an awful lot of points. But if he plays it, you know, SuperJJ could muzzle it, and then you're denying even more points. And maybe, you know, Freddy will play cards here just to try and draw cards out of SuperJJ, but it looks like he's just gonna opt for the Frost, which means that he does maybe intend to try and draw cards out of SuperJJ, but he doesn't have any good, really good tempo plays. I mean, he has Menno into Cantarella, but you don't want to play that yet. That's something that you kind of want to sit on. Meanwhile, though, SuperJJ has Frost, and I don't necessarily see him getting a lot of value out of his White Frost. If he does choose to play it, you know, he's going to be getting 3 points out of it, and then nothing else is going to be played into that Frost. Everything can be played on the front row. Whereas at least with Freddy, he's got Spies, so he can always play more Spies into the Frost he's applied to SuperJJ and get more than the 6 value of the Guardian out of it. So I think Freddy's in a slightly better position with his Frost than SuperJJ is. Saying that, you know, he doesn't want to be making tempo plays now, so playing Frost now is good just to kind of stall things out and try and get Freddy to pass. This is kind of what SuperJJ wants here. SuperJJ wants Freddy to pass. But on the flip side, Freddy doesn't want to pass. Like, Freddy wants to get as many cards out of SuperJJ as he possibly can. So drawing this round out longer is actually better for Freddy. And SuperJJ, you know, he's kind of sitting on his ballistas because what's he going to shoot? What's he going to shoot with the battering ram? He can kill a 1-strength. He can kill a 1-strength Van Hamar. It's not a great situation. And Joachim, interesting, because if it pulls an Infiltrator, although I think there's only one Infiltrator and it's at the bottom of his deck, if it pulled an Infiltrator, it does, and that makes life a bit awkward because you've just put a Spy onto a 4-strength unit, which isn't really something that you want to apply Spies to. What you want to be applying Spies to is the Henselt targets. Although, saying that, Freddybabes sitting on an Assassination, so as soon as SuperJJ plays that Henselt target, Freddy's just going to kill it. So actually, we might be seeing a 3-point Henselt here. You know, that's the Henselt target right there. And I'd expect to see the Assassination come out here by Freddybabes because, you know, he's got it, and that is something that you don't want to see Henselted. Although, saying that, you know, playing that now, it does also mean that Henselt target doesn't exist for the final round, unless SuperJJ finds Shani. But SuperJJ actually has already played Shani. He played Shani to resurrect a Kidweni, which means that SuperJJ, I guess, intends to Henselt the Ballista. He can mulligan 1 Ballista and play 1 next round, which means then Assassination is the wrong call, because the thing is, Freddy doesn't need to worry about Henselt now. So actually, I don't think that Freddy should play Assassination here. But he's opting to anyway and killing that tower. It does deny him the Henselt, but, you know, Freddy had the advantage this round, so he could have just kind of allowed that to exist and played the Imperia instead. And I think, for me, that would have been the better play, because with SuperJJ, you know, he's not got great options for Henselt, and that was his denial. And now, you know, Freddy no longer has a denial for the Henselt target, so kind of an interesting situation. You see the Joachim getting then hit by the Frost, so nothing to be hit by SuperJJ's Frost on Freddy's side, but Freddy getting value out of his Frost, even though there's only 1 row versus 2. And he's putting SuperJJ in a really awkward position, because SuperJJ doesn't want to play a Ballista. SuperJJ wants to keep a Ballista and mulligan a Ballista and use it with Henselt. But because of what's happened here, he has to play a Ballista. And even playing that Ballista, he's not getting this Henselt target, not getting Henselt value at all. You know, he can play another Ballista and hit a 9, and then that becomes an 8. But actually, I would say that Freddy could get the 2-0 here. There's definitely potential for the 2-0, and he's read this situation perfectly, forcing out that Henselt now. So deciding with the Assassination, I think that's what he was going for, deciding with the Assassination, that was him committing to a 2-0 scenario, right? So by choosing to do that, you've decided to try and go for the 2-0. But, you know, 31 to 23, you're forcing more cards out of SuperJJ. SuperJJ plus the Frost 22 needs 9 points. The muzzle will do it. Even with the Frost damage, the muzzle will do it. And now you're sitting on a Nausicaa versus a Ballista, but SuperJJ having to go first. So the Nausicaa, better value than the Ballista. The cards, as they currently stand, the advantage is in Freddy's hand. Freddy has the better card. Vikavara Medic will allow him to take anything from SuperJJ's graveyard. Kira Metz there into, I would imagine, a Thunderbolt Potion. Thunderbolt Potion onto 2 targets. So Freddy now has to decide whether he wants this Vikavara Medic, which he can use to pull an Emissary, or he can use to pull and thin his deck, or he can use to pull anything from SuperJJ's graveyard. So having a little bit of a look and deciding what it is he wants to take. He can resurrect the Iris. If he resurrects the Iris and kills that, that buffs his Nausicaa and also gives him, I believe, 10 points. But actually, no, sorry, he can't resurrect the Iris because Iris is a silver, my mistake. So the out comes the Emissary, and he's going to pull another unit from his deck. Infiltrator or Imperial Brigade. He's going to go, I would have thought, Infiltrator, because then he can put the spying tag onto the Ballista and then kill the Ballista with his Nausicaa. Yep, so there goes the Infiltrator, out comes the spying tag. Kira Metz will go down, and you'll notice that Freddy didn't row stack there. Freddy put that on a different row because he knows about the Kira Metz. He knows about the Thunderbolt Potion. So out that comes and puts points on to SuperJJ's units, but that does mean that the Nausicaa isn't going to kill its target, so he's going to have to play it onto the Emissary instead, but this is very close. I think Freddy has it with these points. It does buff his Nausicaa, and they're 19 to 18. I told you guys, very, very close. And you can see Freddy there kind of exhaling. These guys, I think this is a very tense matchup, and it could definitely go either way. But again, the player who went first won. Very, very interesting to see these kind of situations. So Freddy now just has to win with that Consume deck we saw him lose with against Amir. He's up against Henselt, or he's up against the interesting Crack and Crate deck that SuperJJ has brought. And SuperJJ's got to be feeling the pressure now. You've got to be feeling the pressure now. That was such a close game against Spies, no less, you know. Spies is a very strong deck, and I'm really honestly impressed with SuperJJ that with his Henselt, he managed to bring it down to the 1 point mark like that. So opting for his Crack and Crate Curse repair deck. And Freddy knows about the repairs, right? Freddy knows that SuperJJ is fixing everything, but Freddy's hand not looking so great there. We've got Harpies, 2 Harpies, and we can see at least 1 Necker. I don't think, maybe he has more than 1 Necker. I'm not entirely certain. Potentially to the left of it, he does have more than 1 Necker. He needs to mulligan those Harpies. He doesn't really want to be holding on to them. And 2 Neckers. This is not a happy hand for Freddy. Admittedly, it's not his all or nothing game. You know, he can try and win once more after this, but not the best situation to be in terms of what do you mulligan. I think it was actually 3 Neckers and 2 Harpies. So opting to mulligan, I think he would mulligan both the Harpies, and having a couple Neckers in hand is, you know, he's okay. He's opted to keep 1 and 1. He doesn't actually have any gold cards, so he doesn't have the Woodland Spirit anyway for the Consume combo. So having that Harpy in hand is kind of okay, but honestly, this hand for him is really, really awkward. You can see there the Orgead play coming out of SuperJJ. He has the Orgead and the Morkvarg in deck. So with Crack and Crate, it more or less pulls the same thing. The only difference between Orgead and Morkvarg is that Morkvarg is cursed. That is a unit tag, and Orgead isn't. So this is SuperJJ's strategy. He gets carryover with his Orgead and his Morkvarg. And because Crack and Crate actually buffs 1, you'll see that that Orgead is now 11 strength, and he can repair it. He can heal it with the Armor Smith, so put it back up to full strength should he need to. Freddy getting some eggs on the board, I guess looking to set up some carryover with his Ekamara. Eating those eggs gives him a tasty 11-point play, which is pretty good. Into, oh, those archers, like, SuperJJ just like, nah, no eggs for you, we're just going to shoot them with the archer there, denying that Consume. I stand corrected, Orgead is in fact cursed as well. So there's literally no difference between Orgead and Morkvarg other than the fact that one is a wolf and the other one is a man without a head and a sword. So SuperJJ, you know, either one that he finds in hand or in deck is fine with the Crack and Crate, so he's kind of more or less happy with whatever. Freddy is in such a tough position here. You know, what do you realistically play? You have the lock, the cleaver, so you can use that to deny the Orgead. That is a perfectly valid play. It stops the carryover. I mean, you might not have any, Freddy might not have any carryover, but at least this way neither does SuperJJ. He has his Slizzard, but there's no targets in graveyard for Slizzard. You know, he has his Harpy, but I believe with the Heimei Battle Maiden in SuperJJ's hand, he can just pull out another archer, I believe a Brockvar archer, and just shoot them. So he can't really set up his Harpies either for the Ekamaras. You know, he's in a really, like I say, a really tough spot here. He can't play his Necker because of the muzzle. You have to have your Necker on at least 9 points to be comfortable playing it against the deck that you know is running muzzle. So that's not great either. He has the 13 points from Manticore, which he can play this round and then eat next round with the Ghoul. That is something that he could do. But then it means that if you draw Toad Prince later on, you have less viable targets, although he could always Toad Prince a Griffin. The 8 strength Arch Griffin there is a decent target for that. Unseen Elder coming out, so he's just going to thin the 2 Harpies here. Harpy Hatchling, both are beasts, so if he eats those, it does still thin the 2 targets from his deck. And interestingly, he chose not to eat the Harpy, which would have given him an option with Slizzard should he be running 3 Harpies. So instead of eating that, he's chosen to eat Orgead and set up a great big fat 16-point Unseen Elder. And he's also thinned his deck, because having seen the Neckers and the Harpies in that mulligan, he just wants to get those Harpies out of his deck and make his life a bit better. putting one back into the deck, he can always eat a beast later. Skull comes out into the Berserkers, and that is a lot of points. That you see there, the 12-point Berserker coming out, plus the 5 from Skull, giving him 17 points there. And Freddy, you know, it's going to be tough. It's getting to the point where he can't easily catch up necessarily with 2 cards. That 21-point advantage means he needs to make 22 points with 2 cards. He has a 13 in hand, so that's good. But beyond that 13, I don't think he has another play that would make him 22. He needs a 9-point play, and he's only got an 8, a 6, a 7. I mean, maybe you play the Ghoul and eat something inferior, but that's not really what you want to be doing either. So I think at this point, Freddy, I almost feel like he has to pass. He doesn't have carryover, though, and SuperJJ does have that Morkvarg. He's got the Cleaver in the graveyard. He could eat that with the Ghoul, actually, so that would give him the points that he needs. His alternative strategy here is to play the Harpy and then eat it. That's 11 points plus 7. But 11 plus 7 is still not 22, so he's still kind of in a tricky spot here. He's got 9 and 4, if he consumes, which is 13. That's not enough points, but SuperJJ doesn't realize it. SuperJJ is aware that Toad Prince to play exists with 18 points. And because SuperJJ doesn't know what's in Freddy's hand, he doesn't realize that, you know, Freddy would have to play 2 cards to catch up here. So, because, you know, this is the thing, we have perfect information and the players don't. But there's that Heimei into the Archer, popping all the eggs once again, denying Freddy those opportunities to set up that carryover. And, I mean, he can't even eat a beast here and pull a Harpy because it's in his hand. So I feel like with Freddy, this is such a tough position for him. And, you know, there's also those 3 gold cards in SuperJJ's hand. He's got the Lugos, the Muzzle, and the Royal Decree to pull out his 4th gold card should he ever want it. And he's also got the Armor Smiths in hand to repair units that are damaged. So I feel like for SuperJJ, you know, this is currently his game and he's in control. And I really do feel like Freddy needs to pass. He needs to try and find a better hand. You know, he wants to play the Ekamara for carryover, but he's not going to be eating anything useful. And I mean, I guess he's trusting the fact that SuperJJ isn't going to pass, basically. That because he is you know, 18 points behind with the Toad Prince. But the thing is, if he plays Toad Prince, they'd be on even points. So this is the point where SuperJJ can quite safely pass, because the risk of Toad Prince is it's an 18-point play, right? But 38 to 56. Freddy's only 18 points behind. So even if he made that play, he wouldn't be ahead. Freddy, I mean, SuperJJ must be thinking, what can he play to gain those points? But, you know, I guess not. I think SuperJJ is, in some ways, wasting points this round. You know, you are 30 points up. That is an overkill lead. And there's Freddy hitting that spacebar button and passing. You can hold spacebar to pass, should you want to. He got his carryover, so that kind of negates the Morkvarg, which is nice. It means that SuperJJ can't dry pass him here because the 6 points carryover is worth more than the Morkvarg. So really good there. And these draws, we've got Agiels and we've got some more Harpies. On the flip side, we're getting rid of that Harpy. We're keeping the Solano Harpy. We're getting rid of the regular Harpy. And Berner Brand being mulliganed there by SuperJJ because he can draw it with Royal Decree. You might be thinking, you know, why is he mulliganing a gold? Well, you know, Royal Decree draws a gold card. How many gold cards do you have in your deck? 4. So if you have 4 gold cards in your hand, Royal Decree, dead card. Don't want to be playing it. Okay, so Freddybabes, I think at this point is going to be looking at eating that. He's going to be looking at eating that Wilmar. He can, I believe, slizzard out an Ekamara. Or maybe I'm making this up. I think I'm actually making this up. I thought he played 2 Harpies. Not 2 Harpies, 2 Ekamaras, but actually I think he only has 1. In which case, maybe he's thinking of playing Keiran. This is not a great Keiran play. You eat your own 1 strength unit with the Keiran. It is not a big play. It's not going to get you ahead, which you want to be doing, but it's going to deny him the cursed trigger. So I think you kind of have to eat it, even though it's putting you behind. Because otherwise your opponent is getting just way too much value out of the skulls. And it's just not something that you can be dealing with. And SuperJJ, this is really interesting, because this tells SuperJJ that Freddy didn't have any other options in order to eat that unit. He had to play Keiran, and you hate to see it. That's the kind of play that you hate to see. That 4 value Keiran. It's a shame. So here SuperJJ is in an interesting position because he's got 12 points and Freddy has 11. So if he passes, Freddy has to play another card, at which point they're going into even cards on the final round. But SuperJJ has just invested Harold Hounds now, which is a very powerful card. Harold Hounds now is a really decent card for SuperJJ to be playing. It's a very strong card. When you kill the skulls, different things happen. The skull he played on Freddy's side has a revenge tag, which means it only triggers if it dies on SuperJJ's turn, which is why Freddy ate it. But the skulls, like I say, really interesting cards. Putting that in the graveyard is actually very intriguing, because by putting that in the graveyard, you've just enabled Slizzard. And you know that SuperJJ is running Slizzard. Not SuperJJ, you know Freddy's running Slizzard. So, as such, if you kill the Ekamara, you've just enabled his Slizzard. But, I mean, Lugos, you then discard a card, you've thinned your deck, your life is kind of getting a bit better. Gales here will basically set up Freddybabes' draw for the next round. He can't take Frightener. Oh, this is so painful. He can't take Frightener, but if he does this, it means that he draws Frightener. And Renew, at the moment, it does nothing. On the next round, it'll allow him to replay... Kayran. But at the moment, that's a dead Renew. And he's just given SuperJJ 12 points. Which means SuperJJ is maybe thinking about going for the 2-0. It does put him 2 cards ahead, though. So, at the moment, down 24 points. How does Freddy make 24 points? If he plays a Harpy and an Ekamar, that's 11 and 7. So, that's not 24 points. So, Freddy might have to go 1 card down here. If he plays the... Actually, he could play the Ghoul, which is 9 and 4. That gives him 13, plus the 13 point Manticore in his hand gives him another 13, so that is 26. So he can make 26 points in 2 cards at the moment. So that would give him the lead, that would give him the win. But you know, also SuperJJ could continue to play and build points here, and he's actually opting to do that with the Armorsmith. I think at this stage he needs to get 1 more consume. He needs to get 1 more consume so that his NECA cannot be muzzled. So he may be looking to play that Slizzard, which does consume a unit from the graveyard and pull 1 out. And he could find, I believe, an Ekamara with that, because Ekamara's in the graveyard, which would then set up even more carryover. On the flip side, he could also play his Harpy. If he plays his Harpy, that gets the eggs out, and then gives you options to try and consume those eggs and a little bit more carryover. He only needs to be able to catch up in 3 cards, right? So at this stage, he only needs to play 7 points. He needs to basically play the same number of points as whatever SuperJJ plays whilst holding the Ghoul and the Manticore, and then he'll always have room to catch up. So at this stage, you know, very interesting in terms of what he plays. There's the Ekamara, and he'll eat, I believe, the 5 or the 3 to deny and muzzle here. He's not going to be eating Gales. Although, if he eats Gales, you know, that does... Oh, no, that enables his Renew. It enables his Renew, but it's such... It set up the muzzle for SuperJJ. Oh, I would have eaten the Kayran. I would have eaten the Kayran there. You know, there's plenty of good targets on SuperJJ's side to eat. And by doing that, you've basically just enabled him to get a really high value muzzle. And you know he's running muzzle. I think that was a misplay from Freddy, to be honest. I think he should have eaten the 5. Eating the 5 puts the Ekamara out of muzzle range. And on top of that, sets up his Renew such that he can renew Kayran. But he wanted to renew Gales, and he's taken the risk. And I'm not sure how this is going to pay out. I'm not sure how this is going to pan out for Freddy. I think, you know, Freddy's starting hand maybe put him on tilt a little bit. Opting to go for the burner here into the Skellige Storm onto the back row. This is where we'll see the Griffin come out. It does actually weaken the muzzle. It does weaken the muzzle for SuperJJ, but he's maybe trying to get those attrition points out. Freddy now deciding what he wants to put into move between graveyards. I believe he's running Caretaker, so if he does renew the Gales, he can guarantee his Caretaker. So in terms of what he moves, if he moves something into SuperJJ's graveyard from his own, that means that he wants the Caretaker in. But I believe his graveyard at the moment is just full of Harpies. So I don't think that's something that you would necessarily hold on to. I think instead moving the Berserker there, really smart, because it then denies that Resurrect target from the Priestess of Freya. So I think in terms of plays, that is a small one. Freddy 24 points behind here, so he can still make it up with Manticore and Ghoul. So he still has the option of Manticore and Ghoul. I expect him to probably play the NECA fairly soon. I think he's likely to play the NECA fairly soon because that sets up his carryover, and he now has 10 strength NECA, which means he can no longer have it muzzled. But that, you know, that Ekamara looking like a very tasty muzzle target there for SuperJJ, and denying the carryover from Freddybabes, which SuperJJ needs to do because he knows there are fat neckers coming up, but actually opting to take the 8 and maximize the points, which means this tells you that SuperJJ is looking to try and force the 2-0. He is looking to get enough points ahead of Freddy that either he forces the 2-0 or he puts Freddy into a situation where Freddy has to invest a hell of a lot of cards in order to catch up. Gil's coming out here, and we see the choice of Toad Prince or Woodland Spirit. Toad Prince then comes out, draws that Woodland Spirit, and he will be eating that 13 strength Imperial Manticore, putting it into his graveyard and setting up his Ghoul whilst also buffing his Nekker. That is such a huge play for Freddybabes, and SuperJJ knows it. And now SuperJJ is in such an awkward position because you know that there's a Ghoul in there, you know that Nekkers are coming, and you know that you're going to be having to deal with a hell of a lot of carryover from Freddybabes. You didn't take that Nekker, you chose to take the risky play with the Griffin, and I think at this point, this is where SuperJJ is regretting that choice. And you can see him hand on head, he's regretting that choice. That Gales was huge. Even though Freddy enabled the Nekker to be stolen, not the Nekker, the Ekamara to be stolen, it also set him up with the Gales into the Toad Prince, into the Woodland Spirit. And I'm wondering if the Toad Prince was the last card in his graveyard. The last silver card in his deck. Because if Toad Prince was the last silver card in his deck, then that was a completely calculated play by Freddybabes. You know, when I was talking about him choosing to eat Gales, that means that he knew exactly, you know, what silvers are left in my deck, what am I going to be finding? And as such, because he knew that, what that meant is that he knew exactly what was happening there. And that has put the pressure on SuperJJ, and you see him opting to pass here. Out comes the 11 strength Nekker. There's the pass, and then the carryover, the 6 and the 11. Oh my gosh, 17 points of carryover for Freddybabes. This is the match. This is the one. If SuperJJ loses this, that is him out. And honestly, 17 points of carryover versus 2, drawing into that Nekker means that he doesn't have to consume it to find the last one. I think we'll see a Solano Harpy mulligan here. I think he'll choose to hold on to 11 points and potentially mulligan the Harpy, but actually not mulliganing anything. Leaving the Harpy in hand. Not got eggs to eat. Not got ways to eat the egg. So interesting choice. I guess it depends really what's left in Freddybabes' deck. And you know what actually is left in Freddybabes' deck? There is one Harpy. So choosing to keep the Solano Harpy over the risk of 1/3 of taking the regular Harpy. There's a movement and a shot. He's got the Berserker and he's got the res. But Freddy has, you know, 17 points in his Ghoul. He's going to eat that unit. He's going to gain 17 points. I mean, he's still got 7 on the Harpy, so not the best play ever, but if it had been a regular Harpy, that would be it. And there's the forfeit. Game over. GG. Well played, Freddybabes. Hashtag Babes for Babes. SuperJJ a favorite to win this competition, but being taken out 3-1 by Freddy. And, you know, I've seen people on Twitter, on Reddit, saying Freddy's deck's really janky. Why is he running Lambert? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? But this consume strategy has been really powerful. And Freddy, even with such a terrible starting hand, all of those Harpies and those Nekkers, managing to turn the whole thing around and shut down SuperJJ with all of that carryover. And I mean, you gotta wonder if he had muzzled the Ekamara, would that have been enough? Would that have been enough if he'd taken that 6 carryover away and given it to himself? You know, would that have closed the gap enough? I don't think so. I think, you know, with that 11-point Nekker and that 17-point Ghoul, that even not changing, although, I mean, it would be a 12-point swing, so decent amount of points. I don't think with the hand that SuperJJ had, it would have been enough, because those Berserker Marauders, they do well when you have a lot of units on the board. And in a round 3, when you're playing 3 cards, do you have a lot of units on the board? No, you just don't. You have Morkvarg, sure, he came back, but, you know, not a lot of options. And very impressive play by Freddybabes, taking out SuperJJ, advancing to the finals, and more importantly, qualifying himself for that Gwent Challenger in December. So we'll be seeing him in the Gwent Challenger and in the finals. And the question now remains, who is it going to be against him? Hana-chan or Tailbot? Hana-chan going 3-2 to Metronos in the quarterfinals. Tailbot, a very clean 3-0 versus Iron Habit. So it will be, or Iroh Habit, it will be interesting to see who comes out on top here. We're not going to see a SuperJJ versus Hana-chan rematch because SuperJJ is out. But for now, guys, I'm just going to take a quick break, rest my voice a little bit, and then we will be right back with some more action. Don't go anywhere.